Good afternoon and welcome once again to the Polity, reaching you live from the Abuja studios of Kaftan Television. As usual, we'll bring to you discussions on politics, governance, and the state of the nation. Today, we have more of that in store for you. And like we do when we start the program every other day for the last couple of months, we will make the encouragement that you go out there and get your PVCs. Elections are just about exactly 1 month to the day, February 25th, when we will be making a choice of a new administration after 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. That being said, you need to take matters into your own hands and go out there, get your PVC. This is still the best time to do that. As I said, yesterday was the best time, but today is the second best time. So do go out there, get your PVCs. It's really not as stressful as you think, so you can make your choice about a month from now. Welcome once again to the Polity. I am Amadine Oberin. Now today it's all about education. Like I said, we talk about politics and governance, and education is a part of that. It shows that we need to shine a light on this because we want to know what the government is currently doing and what individuals are also doing to contribute to their quota and uplift, Nigerians in terms of education. We'll have a series of discussions today, but we'll be starting our program with our first guest. Is already in the house. We'll be speaking with Mr. Jeremiah Hussaini. Is the Executive Director, the Begotten Educational Foundation. I hope I got that correctly. Welcome to the program.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, let's start with the basics. You're not with the government, obviously. So I'd like you, from an outside perspective, what's your assessment of the level of education or how well it's going for Nigeria as it is?
Okay. Thank you very much once again for having me. So actually, that I wouldn't say that's the basics, because that's like a more taking a deeper dive into the sector itself. When it comes to analyzing the impact and of course how solid it is, in Nigeria. And straight to your question, of course, I would say that so far, actually, it depends on who you're asking the question. If you're asking, the drivers of this, especially, from the government circle, you're going to hear, oh, fantastic, amazing and all that. If you're asking people who are, driving programs around the education space as well, some may tell you, oh, wonderful, they've been having, tremendous results and all that. But for those of us in the development space, because we understand the impact of this sector, we understand what education means to human, and of course what it contributes to the nation in terms of national development. Sincerely, I must say that we have not gotten there yet. We have not hit our mark as a country. We have not hit our mark as a people. And sincerely, there is much more to be done.
All right. We'll delve further into some of those specifics, but people might wonder, how much can you make a difference from outside of the government? Because there's this take where people say, I can't really do much. I don't have government funds. I don't have that capacity. So in your sector, in your field, you're not alone. There are other...
Correct.
So what can you really do? Do you get deterred by the amount of work that is there to be done?
Okay, so the thing is, a lot can be done by the non-government actors. For those of us in the non-profit angle, we saw the problem before we came in. And believe you me, there are actually solutions to these issues that we are tackling. For one, I found a non-profit organization, the Begotten Educational Foundation, and our main goal is to advocate for and also provide quality education that solves problems, right? So, and that is what we have been doing. And to some extent, I can tell you with confidence that yes, we have been able to tackle illiteracy in some communities, even at state level to some extent. So there's actually a lot that NGOs can do. However, we are not the planners of education in Nigeria. We're not the ones who set the curriculum or who, churn out the policies, on educations and all of that. So we don't really have the overall power to really effect the real change that we desire to see, to fasten our work or to make sure that, we get more impact, in programs that we do. However, that doesn't also, stop, people in the development space to actually intensify efforts, to carry out surveys, and to say, okay, where exactly do we have XYZ problem, just so that you're better informed, and you will now be able to deploy your solutions to those specific area, because we've had instances where right funds were channeled into wrong projects, or you go to a community, give them light, not really knowing that those people, they need water, so we've had those issues over time. And another thing there is, over time we have also seen, especially at state levels, even at the federal levels, where we see government just almost taking the back seat, to say, oh, the NGOs are already doing it, let them go and push it. We are not the government. We do not formulate the policies. We do not enact these laws. We do not, we are not the ones who, allocate the budget, the budgets to the sector and all of that. So there's much more for the government to also do, while we also know our powers, we know our onions, and we also know the roles to play.
All right. I'd like to know the synergy between non-for-profit and the government. Is there like an open door policy, or are you just working in silos? You do your thing, the government does its thing, and hopefully things work out. Do they allow that level of dialogue where you spot a problem and you say, you know what, this is where this needs to go, and then you can actually talk with them?
Oh yes, so there is actually. So that is where the open dialogue come to play. So in most cases, the issues are first spotted by the non-profit guys, those of us in the development space, because to a reasonable extent, we know the grassroots, we know the nitty-gritty, we understand what is happening. Let me give you an instance. So we got a mail, my organization received a mail sometimes in November last year to come up with an article with facts and figures of what is happening, what has happened with the flood that, we all heard about the flood, that affected states in Nigeria, with top worst states like Jigawa, Delta State, Bayelsa, Kogi, Taraba, to name a few. And I went online to check, and believe you me, I didn't really see what I was looking for. If I even checked the ministry's, website and checked, the government portals, nothing. All you could see were, images of buildings being submerged with water, and of course how it has affected the transportation of food from, from the south to the north and stuff like that. And if sometimes, argument between which one is the worst hit state, and is it Jigawa or is it Bayelsa? If government, actors arguing about this line, but I was looking for data to say, okay, how has flooding affected education in this state, which I did not see online. So as a non-profit, those of us acting in this space, we had to quickly roll out an intervention, put a team together to go into 5 states. So we carried out a survey, an assessment survey across the state, where we go to each state and stay for like 3, 4, 5 days, set up teams, dialogue with the locals, interview parents, go to schools, interview teachers, talk with pupils, talk with community heads and all of that, to really, and of course, distribute questionnaires and surveys to say, okay, how has this thing affected livelihood, affected learning, especially learning, because that's my area, that was, the main focus. And then we came up with the facts, and of course with the documentary and with the figures later. And what we did after was to send this data, upload this data on our open system, and of course send to the relevant government agencies, just so that they can learn from what we have also discovered and properly channel their intervention to these places.
That's interesting.
So that's just also one area where both the NGOs and the governments also come hand in hand to work together.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of the advice usually given, where they say, find a problem and offer the solution. I've actually been in this same spot where you go online to find certain information, especially within the country, and you find that it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
And I think what happens is, not to quote or to quote the popular fictional character Spider-Man or Spider-Man's uncle, with great power comes great responsibility. So when often you find that vacuum, you usually have to be the one to step up and fill it. So kudos to you for that. Now, let's talk about the scope of education.
Okay.
I think when education is mentioned, the first thing people see is a classroom, a board, marker, teacher. I wonder, is there more to it? You know, we have, when people say they want to learn, I'll just give you a little story. We had a colleague speaking about her sibling who is in between, I think she's about to, or she's not written JAM yet. So there's a period where she's going to be at home.
There's that wait period.
Yes, and so she had the interest to, you know, learn to be a tailor, study to be a tailor. And the dad says, no, my daughter can't be a tailor. And so I'm wondering, in terms of vocation and all that, does that count as education, or this idea that people have that, no, my children cannot use their hands, that's not proper education? What's really going on there?
Okay, let me start by responding to that question to say that education does not end, you know, within the four walls of a classroom. Education is the assimilation and understanding of information. Okay, I mean, especially new information that can solve problems. That's what the Begotten stands for. You know, we advocate and provide, you know, safe, equal, and quality education that solve problems. Now, if you get to understand something now which you have not during the course of this discussion, this dialogue, you know, you get to know something that you have not been privileged to know before now. You have learned something, and that is what happened. You know, that's what happens within the four walls of the classroom. However, the issue we are having is, and again, we have both formal and informal education. So the formal education is the one that happens within the confinement of a school setting, where, you know, everything is, you know, regimented. There's time for this, time for that. There are subjects, you know, and of course, you know, you get to do CA, you get to do exam. You're being assessed by your exams. Then of course you move to the next level and all of that. However, we have the informal education as well, which is the broadest, which has the broadest curriculum. These are the education that happened within, you know, for an individual as you grow up. The things you learn for yourself, or the hidden curriculum that, as we educators will say, those hidden curriculums that you learn or you undergo, especially from the house. So a child is being taught, you know, if a child is being taught from the house morals, ethics, and all of that, you know, how to eat, how to sit very well, how to communicate, how to respect elders, you know, things like that from the house. So informal education has already started before they even now click into the formal education, you know, to take them on and all of that. However, the issue that we have had in this part of the world, Africa, especially Nigeria, is that we have almost completely relegated even the formal education. Now, of course, we all know that education started, you know, way back, where you just have a classroom, you have a teacher, you know, at the front of, you know, a whole lot of children saying, okay, this is it, that is that, PUT, put, ON, on, and all of that, you know. But the world has moved. If you look at a car of 1805, and you look at a car of today, you see a big difference. If you look at the fashion of 1805, how people were dressing back then and today's fashion is completely different. If you look at even how government, how systems were being, you know, put in place, or policies and all of that back then, they are different from now. But how come if you look at a classroom setting of way back then and look at a Nigerian classroom setting of today, even look at some of the best schools that we call the best of the best schools, they are still the same thing. Not putting into recognition that the world has moved. You know, a lot of people right now are encouraging vocational education to say, okay, how do we now make sure that the education that we are getting is actually solving problems? You know, designing your classroom, designing the curriculum, training the teachers, you know, prioritizing teachers' professional development to see that the teaching, the knowledge that is being transmitted or that is being transferred in the classroom or outside the classroom are actually knowledge that are important, that are needed at that time, and can actually solve problems. Because if you get yourself armed with any information or knowledge that can't give you a job, that can't put food on your table, or that can't put you at the position where you can solve problem for yourself, your family, and your society, such knowledge is waste.
That's very interesting, and I think that's a problem we also have with the curriculum. You know, I think I've shared this story before. Perhaps it was you or someone.
Yes, during the last show, you talked about the curriculum.
Yeah, and there's the particular issue I mentioned was that while I was in school, in the university, in my final year, one of our lecturers also lectured our head of department.
Oh, wow.
So now they're colleagues, but it used to be lecturer to student. And the funny thing was that the older lecturer was teaching us with the same papers, the exact same. They were yellow, you know. They used to be white, but they're yellow now. That he used to teach the current head of department, which is really an issue with moving with the times.
Mm-hmm.
But that aside, let's talk about another focus for this year. Part of the, I don't want to call it celebration because it's kind of a soft spot, but part of the observation of the International Day for Education this year has to do with the issues going on in Afghanistan and
Correct.
other places where women are increasingly getting lesser access to education.
Correct.
So in that aspect, what's going on in that respect? Because we know that in any case of oppression, as long as there is a group that is oppressed, eventually whatever reason is being used for that group will be used for others. Because people say, I'm not a woman, I escaped it, you know. So in the end, what is going on for advocacy? Because I believe the last time you were here, that was for the International Day of the
Girl Child.
Yeah. So in terms of education, how can we really increase or up the ante in terms of involvement of the girl child and removing the barriers that stops them from getting education?
Okay, that's a very vital question, because right now, even in Nigeria, let me start from here, even in Nigeria, that's a very big problem. I think we're just a thin line between what is happening in Afghanistan and the problem that we already have, the crisis we already have in education in Nigeria, to be frank, right? So the role right now, what needs to be done is advocacy. As you can see, even today's celebration has been dedicated to the girls and women in Afghanistan, who that have been under prioritized right now, and of course can no longer have access to both secondary and even education at the tertiary level. Now, but let me bring it back home again. By explaining what I mean by it is already even happening in Nigeria, and if care is not taken, it's going to be a crisis that will blow up and really destroy most things, most sectors. You remember the last time I was here, I was talking about an article that I put up on the newspaper, which I titled, "What if education can solve Nigerians' problem?" Right? So, I mean, if you read deep down, you know, extracting the article, some of my thoughts there were, you know, when are we going to prioritize education, the education pillar in Nigeria? When are we going to have a government that removes politics entirely from education, that increases the political will, you know, for education to the point where it will begin to reflect, the political will begin to reflect down, to cascade down to the quality of the education that children will be receiving in school, especially the girl child as well. But let's just even talk about the blanket, you know, thingy of the education right now. Now, more advocacies need to go into it to see that, you know, governments on their own part, these are the people who formulate these things, and of course say that yes, they take education seriously and all of that, but it doesn't show on the budget. It doesn't show on the national budget. So that is the first place to start, you know, to increase funding, and let me even say, I mean, I believe you bought this suit. I don't know when you bought this suit, but let's say you bought it, say, January last year. If you want to go to the market or you want to go online to order for this same suit, my brother, I can tell you that the price will no longer be the same, correct?
True.
Good. Now, how come we've been having, you know, budgets, you know, for education that will not even solve anything? It won't even go 30%. It won't even scratch the problems that we have in education. Nigerians' entire budget for education cannot train Nigerians' teachers for a year. Talking about just teachers' professional development, cannot train Nigerian teachers for a year. I'm not even looking at providing education infrastructures, making sure that, you know, funding is available for us to get more books in schools, and of course making sure that the schools are safe. Because right now we hear about the bomb blasts, we hear about, you know, schools being attacked, you know, by bandits, by terrorists in up north, and in fact even in the east right now, you know, and all of that. But you know, what measures have they put in place? What measures, what active, you know, responses are we seeing from the government? That's why I'm talking about more advocacy, lobbying, and of course taking these issues, this crisis, you know, to their forefront to say, okay, you know what, we're not going to stop until you increase budget. We're not going to stop until we see that, you know, you prioritize political will for education. We're not going to stop until we see that, you ensure the quality control of teachers, because that's another thing. We have seen a very porous windows in our schools where the teaching profession right now in Nigeria has become one place where somebody who is looking for a job and didn't get anything from any place will just, let me just go to a school and start to teach. And such, especially the private schools. So they just take the teachers regardless of if the person studied carpentry or zoology, at uni, or if the person even went to higher education at all, to say, okay, just come. So that TROCN, Teachers Registration Council of Nigeria, has a large work to do regarding teachers' control in Nigeria. And of course, we also need to fund the schools and of course make them safe. We need to fund the schools. I went to a school yesterday. When we had an emergency intervention yesterday in one of our schools here in the FCT. I wish I would be able to show you pictures just so you see you show the world. Like in this FCT in Amac, there as in no floor, no ceiling, no windows, no doors, nothing. No pavement, nothing. You could in town. I'm not talking about Kwali or one very far place in the FCT. Here in Amac. So what is the education? What are those people who are responsible doing to that regard? And there are agencies. They are being paid salaries. Budget comes to them, every year. Why are they not channeling these things? So these are some of the crises that we have. And if care is not taken, it gets to a point where we begin to say, okay, Nigeria is having over 1 million children who are out of school.
We actually have quite a bit, but it's still on the question though. What specific things can be done for the girl child? That would bring them in, perhaps. Like what you've described now is a barrier that I believe faces, everyone. So how do we get more girl children? Perhaps the cultural barriers and all that. How do we start to break those down?
Okay, so the first thing you just mentioned, actually getting the girl child to school, everybody has to be involved. From the government to the NGOs to the school owners to parents, even the children themselves. I was speaking, like I said, I was in a school yesterday where we went to enroll children to school. We have a program, by the way, called the Future 500 Challenge. Every year we try our best to see that we take 500 children from the streets back to school. Children who were either in school before and dropped out based due to poverty or some issues and all of that, to take them back to school. So there was this very, very particular boy, Hassan. His name is Hassan. And we saw Hassan, on the street hawking. And I spoke with him, and he was excited about education. And I asked him, so why are you not in school? He said he dropped out, from primary 2. I said, why? He said because they've been driving him from school fees, and of course his parents have refused to pay his school fees. I said, okay, I'm going to come back. Can you take me to your parents' house? He took me to his parents' house. I spoke with the parents, and they agreed. And I said, I'm going to put Hassan back to school, and they agreed, which is what we do. We get consent from the parents. Then we took him to school yesterday. Now, Hassan came to school with a sister. He came to school with his junior sister. And after we finished Hassan's case, and I even turned and asked the auntie, what about the young lady here? Because she was on mufti, nothing, no uniform. And they said, no, don't worry about her. I was like, why? Like, is she not supposed to be in school? They're like, no. Then I even asked for that. Okay, has she ever been enrolled in school? They said no. And this young lady, this girl I'm talking about is around 6 to 7 years old, who is supposed to be at least around primary 1 already, or primary 2, and this girl has not been in school. Now, I later got to discover that it was the priority of the parent. They prioritized, the male child education over that of, the girl in that particular family. In some other instances, it has also been the role of the government. Because there are some things you also provide in schools as well, especially in higher education. There are some things you also need to put in place to make sure that the learning environment is safe and convenient and hygienic enough for the girl child to be there and enjoy learning. So when those facilities, those infrastructures are not put in place, they also hinder the girl child from learning. When you just design a toilet, for instance, for boys, for everybody, and just, and the girl, and imagine a school of say 500 pupils or 500 students, and you just have facility designed just for boys. It won't be conducive for the girl child to also use. So some of those things, when children are being kidnapped from school, when children are being, harassed, when school are being blown up, how do you ensure that the trauma for both genders though, but especially for the girl child, how do you ensure that, they get that confidence back to say, okay, they want to return back to school? And of course, civil society group, NGO on the other hand, still need to do a lot to advocate, lobby around, meet with political actors, meet with religious leaders, meet with traditional leaders, meet with parents to say, hey guys, you know what, this thing you're doing is not really the end thing. This is where the world has moved to. We need to fix it this way. You need to prioritize your child's education. You need to take her to school and all of that. So these are just some of the measures that can be put in place.
All right, thank you so much for that. So let's just round it up now with, something you feel that we've not touched and you would like the public to know, everyone about education and, the way forward, really. Okay,
so the way forward is digital education. If we're talking about digital economy, if we're talking about digital governance, even law right now has entered, you can use AI right now. I saw a meme last week of, about that ChatGPT, how lawyers can be using it and all of that. And these are information, these are product of education. And it is unfortunate that, in this part of the world, we still do not, we do not even have the functional traditional education, not to even talk of, digital education. But that is where the world is going to right now. Yes, we have we have some unicorns in Nigeria. We have the likes of, Paystack, Flutterwave, and some other, Mustard Insights and all of that here in Nigeria. But we can do more. We can do more. Let us, the government needs to also prioritize digital education in schools as well, especially private schools. Especially public schools. Some private schools, they already have smart TVs, smart board, they learn with the iPad and all that. But the greater percentage of Nigerian students are still in the public schools. How do we ensure that digital education is being, engrafted into the curriculum? Digital devices are being used to teach these children. Let me give you another story as I close this aspect. I went to a school for inspection the other day, one of our schools here again in the FCT. We actually have 32 schools in the FCT through our mentorship program in the Begotten Educational Foundation, because we meet with these children every week to see that we mentor them, to see that they stay in school. We do not just bring them from the street to school. We ensure that we train the teachers twice every year to see that the quality that they are given, quality of teaching increases. Then, of course, also mentor them every Friday to really notice that, to really see that they are in school. So I was in this particular classroom to just see what's going on, the teaching and all of that. And of course, the normal traditional setting, the teacher was right in front of the classroom, pointing her cane, the whatever, to the board. She had already written some set of 3-letter words and all that, asking the children, I think that was primary 3 or primary 4. Primary 4. Primary 4, 3-letter words for them to pronounce after her. And she got to one and she said, they should pronounce P-U-T. They all, pronounce in unison, spelled the word. And she asked them to make a sentence with P-U-T. And in unison, the entire class, to my amazement, very sad, said, "Mommy, please put soup for me." Can you imagine a 2023 world where we are? The 2023 world where we are, the teachers are still not being armed with the right way, digitalized way to teach. And of course, children are still learning PUT as in primary 4. "Mommy, please put soup for me." A sentence that is not even correct in the first place. And so those children, they go home with that particular knowledge. How will that knowledge give them a competitive advantage over their counterpart anywhere in the world? So we are ensuring, we are pushing for quality education, especially digital education. Education at all levels in Nigeria should be digitalized so that we'll have real growth and development and advancement in this country.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Jeremiah Oseni, for your thoughts and your passion for education. We hope that more children, more persons continue to benefit from it. Thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. That's what we'll have on the first segment. Like I said, today is about education. We'll go on a short break. When we return, the program continues with more discussion from different perspectives on the International Day of Education. Stay with us. We'll be right back.